Welcome to Professor Game Podcast, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who brings the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration that help us in the process of getting the students to learn what we teach. And I'm Rob Alvarez. I teach and work at IE Business School in Madrid, where we create interactive and engaging learning materials. Want to know more? Go to professorgame.com/subscribe, start on our email list, and ask me anything. Welcome, engagers, to another episode of Professor Game Podcast, where we are with Felipe. And Felipe, before we kick off, are you prepared to engage?
I am.
Let's do this, because during the last 6 years, Felipe has been teaching courses in operations management area at undergrad, graduate, and executive levels. And although he loves teaching, he realized how old-fashioned and non-effective is the traditional way of teaching. And based on that experience, he founded GameLab in 2013, which is an EdTech company that develops online and short-term simulators that enhance the motivation, engagement, and learning experience of students at business schools. How? Transforming the classroom into a playground. And from reading that, you probably can tell very, very quickly why we have Felipe with us today. So Felipe, is there anything we're missing from that intro that our listeners should know?
No, it's absolutely. I mean, you did the research, I have to say, and yeah, I teach at uni, particularly like pricing and revenue management, and I realized like students that sometimes the students that don't engage in a regular class sometimes are the best decision takers or decision makers in a business simulation class. And then I realized that if you want to engage students and you want those students to really learn by doing, probably the best way is or one of the best ways is game-based solutions and game-based learning. And that was started like as a teaching innovation, but then suddenly like we start to see that a market that has been growing. And then from 2018, we dedicate full time, and we received some seed money from angel investors in order to keep things growing. So now we have a team out of 9 people in the team, and we're very excited about the changes that has been accelerated with the coronavirus. I mean, at the end, university has to move digital. Digital their classes, and one of the best ways to do it's with simulations.
Absolutely, and that's the very appropriate topic nowadays, talking about how to digitalize our learning experiences, which has been a challenge for many and has opened as well new markets for companies like yours. And I have to say, Felipe, I feel very identified as a professor of both gamification and operations and, from business school and so on. So I think we have very much in common. I have to say as well, full disclosure, I did use one of your simulations, the Soda Pop game, in my class. It was one of the simulations that I used, one of the games that we had during our operations management class in IE when I taught the undergrads, and I had a very good experience. And of course, that is one of the reasons why you are here with us today. So, Felipe, I would like to start with a story. We always like stories, especially because of all the things that they can teach us. And as you know, you're into game-based learning, you realize stories and themes are also part of the way that people learn. So we want to learn from your story. And this is a story particularly of a time where you set out to do something interesting, challenging, but, it didn't go as you expected. It was a first attempt in learning or a fail or a failure. And we want to learn from that experience with you. We want to see how you got there, how you got out of there. What did you learn from that? We want to be there with you on the ground level.
Well, I have to say that I make many mistakes on the way. Many, but some other strikes. But in terms of wrongdoings that we have done, in terms of developing games, it's when you engage in a game that you haven't really tried the dynamics of the game, the mechanics in the game, in the audience, and you start to code and you start to work with the programmers and try and start to develop the software that will be this game in the end. And then when you finally realize and you take the blanket out of the game and then you try with the audience, you realize that the game is really, really boring. Right? This is the worst that could happen. That really itch with the game, but then suddenly you realize that the game it's boring. I mean, it doesn't engage students, and it's very important. So what I would like to, because I received many professors from when they see the games that we do, and because they're really growing with this trend, they approach me and say, Felipe, I have an idea of the game, and I would like to develop a game with you. First, developing a good game is expensive. It's lots of hours of design, lots of hours of programming, lots of hours of developing material, because at the end it's a serious game, right? So you have to prepare all the material that will help the professor to run the simulation and stuff like that. So the first is to start with create your game in paper, like create the dynamic, the analog dynamic, and then try the game in class, like the beer game, which is just an analogic way of playing, right? Not with software, and play with the game and see how it works, right? So whenever try once and twice and many times, and once you really feel comfortable with the game, that actually the dynamic and the emotion that produce and the learning that produce, it's fulfill your goals, then is when you move to, okay, let's move this game, digitalize the experience, which means to create the software, the piece of software that will allow that could be it could be used in other classrooms all over the planet. Sorry if I extend a bit, but this is what
No, that sounds great. In fact, I'm going to interrupt you just because that sounds like a very key lesson. But if possible, Felipe, and of course, whenever you can disclose, I know some things cannot be disclosed, but can you go sort of deep into one time when this happened to you? We're very experiential, as you know, as humans. So we want to see like whatever you can share, like, oh, I did this initially and this happened to us and the experience was not great. So we had to go back, like whatever that looked like. One of these times that these things happen, because as you know, and the audience, I always like to remind, and it's one of the reasons for this question, we're not perfect. Not even the best ones in their craft get it right the first time necessarily. We have a lot of lessons and first attempts on learning. So we want to be there with you in that sense.
Okay, let me give you 2 examples then, right?
Sure, perfect.
Okay. The first example is a game that actually we take out of our portfolio. That basically we take a dynamic that has been published with one professor, don't remember the name. There was a marketing game, and then we replied the dynamic. We make some changes. We didn't try on with the audience as I told you, in paper based. We did it regularly with the software, and finally, after a lot of work, we finished the software. We tried once in an audience that was really really bad. I mean, the game didn't engage, didn't make the learning outcomes that we wanted. So finally, we take this game out of the portfolio. And the reason, I mean, if I go back in time, the problem was not that we moved too fast in the design process, because the design process you have to do paper-based at the beginning. You should do that. Try once and again and again and again, and when you're really comfortable that actually the game works, then you move to the next step, which is design and software developing, right? That's the first one. The second one, it happened like we developed the warehouse game, which is actually illustrates the reality inside of the warehouse and how you have to manage people around, right? So basically it's warehouse operations. And we did though because we went to a very big wholesale warehouse of like Home Depot here in Latin America, which is called Sodimac. And they say, okay, we want you guys do simulations. We need in this moment, we need the money. So say, okay, let's create a game that replicates the warehouse operations, right? And we did it. And actually, the game is very nice, it looks and has a very good like look and feel, right? And when we finished the development of the game and then we tried for first time, the game was really, really complex. I mean, there were so many different levers that you have to manage that was impossible. And I was looking with my 2 developers at that time, like, man, what we did. I mean, what we're going to tell to the customer, right? So because we have to go back to our customer. And then we realized, what if we play this game as a team rather than as individuals? And then the game changed from heaven to earth, or earth to heaven, whatever, right? It changed in 180 degrees because then the game was so fun and also very good in terms of the learning objectives. and also foster strongly the collaboration, because you can manage a warehouse if you are not collaborating with your teammates, right? Because a warehouse is basically a big chaos, right? So this was a way that this second example is how we face a problem, and then we just, with a small change, not even one line of code, we just, with a change in perspective, we move from a game that was very complex and then very difficult to play for the players to a very good game, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's actually a great example, exactly what we wanted to see. Like, how did you get there? How did you come out of it? I think that's very exciting. And taking a spin on this and actually going for, I don't know, a good experience that you had. You set out to do, I don't know, it could be the soda pop game, it could be anything else. You said, well, this is the challenge that we're going to face. You faced it head on and it actually went well. It went, you got the results that you wanted. We want to know, what your experience looked like. Of course, if you can attribute any success to any of the factors you want to name, that would be great as well. But we want to, again, live that story with you. We want to know, sort of the intimacy as much as is possible.
Well, okay, about the success and what were the elements of the success. First, it's the pricing game. In the pricing game, it started as a learning innovation that I did just to increase the engagement in my class, in my class of pricing and revenue management. I started using the dynamic, a game that has been designed in paper by a professor from Pompeu Fabra, which is called Kailan Taluri. And based on his game, I started to play it in class with a piece of papers. And I did it like many times. I would say like over a year, I did it like at least 5 times, right, with students. And then I realized the outcome. And says, this game is really good, but it will be much better and much faster if we can, instead that the students give me the information and piece of paper, and I wrote these things in the board and so on, that I can play many rounds if we do everything through the computers, right? And with that idea in mind, we digitalize this game, and then it works really, really good. And then I start to use it professors in the school that I teach. And then we went to a congress in Argentina, where professors from different universities from the US came over. And then we present the game, and then we start to have customers in NYU and different universities all over. So then I realized that games, that once you take a class and you develop and you craft it in a simulation that actually works and fulfill the objectives of this class, then you can replicate this class all over the world. And that's how I started the pricing. There was a good success. And the second success that we have in terms of it's the soda pop, which is the soda pop that you try is not the initial soda pop game that we developed. And then we realized that one thing is to have a good simulator. All right. You will find professors that have some good simulator, but a different thing is that you have first a simulator that has a homework mode and a classroom mode, so that has a full master panel for the professor, that always, also you have a lot of teaching material, and we develop learning experiences, which means that you have the piece of software, but also I give you the chances to try any of those experiences that are ready to run. So for you will just to focus on the class and not focus on the logistics or create the content for the class, right? So it's very important to be successful, to make things easier for the professor, right? So 2 things: first, the software; second is the complementary material; and third is the support. And we realize that the support is a key element of success, because at the end you have to help a professor that will be facing an audience which is risky, right? Because if things go wrong, who to blame? The professor, right? So that's why we help the professor. That's why we, now with the coronavirus and professors are doing their classes online, we came to class with them and we helped them to run the simulation. We are with him, so he felt comfortable that things will work. And if there is any question that could be difficult at the beginning, we can help with that, right? So that's very, very important. Like these 3 elements: a good piece of software that has everything. Second, very good learning material. Experiences and all the material ready to run for the professor. And third, the support that we give. We are there. with you in your class, which was something not possible like prior to the coronavirus, because I cannot take a plane and go to, let's say, Madrid for 2 hours and came back, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And we were not as used to having all these Zoom meetings and so on.
Yeah, but now it's possible, and the experience is much better. So this is, I mean, it's one thing is the design of the game, but not enough. Then you need the other three things in order to scale the game, and then the same class will be taught in so many different schools.
Absolutely. So Felipe, we've been talking about all of these interesting and great experiences. You've given us some clues about this, but we always like to know, what does it look like when you're going to create one of these games, one of these simulations for business schools, for your school, for your class? How does that work? How can we get into your mind a little bit and see, again, if you have any process, brainstorm? I don't know how you do it. We want to sort of pick your brain a little bit in that sense.
Okay. Well, over the years we understood and we have developed a method, right? I would say, and the method, even though I tried, and we have an agreement. I mean, more than agreement, we have an alliance, a partnership with the University of California, Santa Cruz. They have a master's in serious games, and we have been working with them as well. And when they asked me the same thing, I mean, how you guys develop the games? Because serious games is something that is not massive. I mean, it's increasing, but there's not many people doing serious games. And I answered like, well, first, we understood that you need, I mean, from the point that you said, okay, I want to make a game, let's say a queuing game. Okay, I want to teach queuing theories. How can I teach a really like abstract and difficult and mathematic-based thing like queuing to students in order to make it something interesting and fun? So from the moment that you take this challenge, it will take you in between 3 to 4 months just to develop the architecture of the game, which means to make up the design or the basic design of the game, which means the context, which means the mechanics of the game. So basically, you have a design phase that will take like between 3 to 4 months in order to create the context, in order to create the variables, the mechanics of the game, and finally to develop this was what I told you before, this paper-based prototype, right? So you develop a paper-based prototype, and then when you have created this dynamic and it works, then you move to the construction phase, which is, I would say, 3 to 4 months in order to take all these plans to the developers, and then they will create the developer. I mean, typically 2 guys. They will create the game. They make it reality, and then it takes like around 2 months in order to create all the teaching material that goes with the game. So in total, it's something between 6 to 9 months, because sometimes you can save some time if the professor has already created this dynamic, the paper-based one, right? And that's something that I encourage professors. If they have ideas, better if they have a paper-based game that you already have tried many times in class, and this is much easier to develop a game from there. Did I answer your question?
I think so. I think you were talking about how what is the process? How does that look like from, writing the paper-based part until the rest? When you're writing the paper-based version, do you follow any steps? You create the learning objectives, or you find out what they are. Then with that, you do this and that. Is there any 1 or 2 steps that you take to create that paper-based dynamic?
Well,
if you have it, if you don't, it's fine as well.
First, it's very important to identify the learning objectives. What is the 3 or 4 elements that you want the student to learn after he has played the game? That's the main question. I want him to learn this or that. I mean, not many things, cannot be 10. I mean, no more than 3 or 4, right? That's the first thing.
Exactly.
And the second that you have to do is, if the student cannot manage more than 3 or 4 variables in order to manage the game, in order to and then to action the game and finally learn what you want them to learn. So if you put like 10 different levers, it will be very difficult for the student to really, I would say, understand and make the connection between the concepts and the game. But if you downsize to 3 and to 4 key decisions, then it would be much more easy to go with the student with the game in order that he will face different challenges, like I would say stages, and then finally he will learn everything that you want in this particular 2 hour setting, right? Which is the class.
Absolutely, and that makes a lot of sense. Like understanding what those key actions you want them to do, and I'm guessing as well it has to do with the practice of those learning objectives that you want them to be doing. Like when you do this in real life, what does it look like? And there you can sort of get creative from
Exactly.
that point
Let
on.
me give you one example.
Sure,
In the pricing
perfect.
game, just sorry to go back to that. There's only one decision that the student have to take, and this is I have to say again, this is not my game. We digitalize the game, but the paper-based game architecture it's from a professor from Superpower. But again, the only thing that he has to do, the student, is just to change the price or maintain the price. That's it. Over the entire, all the rounds of the simulation is the only thing he has to decide is the price. That's it, to set the price. But we move the student over different rounds and different stages when we change the environment, so it makes much more difficult to set up the pricing in the different rounds, right? So again, it's what you want to teach and what is the minimum amount of key decisions, levers, at the same time that the student has to manage in order to move forward into the game.
Fantastic. Just a quick break before we continue with this episode. If you've been enjoying this podcast, I would really appreciate if you share it with your friends and family and on social media. On Twitter and Instagram, it's at RobAlvarezB and the hashtag ProfessorGame, all one word. And in Facebook, you can find the Professor Game page. Thanks in advance for your engagement. So, Felipe, we would like to know, again, from your experience, from what you observed and seen throughout your time at GameLearn and your experience as a professor, is there any sort of best practice, anything that you would say, well, if you're going to, sort of go head on and use or create a game-based learning experience, is there something that, again, would be a sort of a best practice, something that you would recommend other people to do as well?
Yeah. Best practices, I will start from the basics, but just give you a little bit of time to prepare to get comfortable with the simulation, right? That's very important in order to, because if you are new, your students will be new for the simulation, but for you should not be a new thing, right? You have to give yourself ahead of time to really learn how the simulation works, play as a student. So you will go through the same road that the students will face. That's very important, I guess. And because I see so many professors all over the world, I would say that not everyone does the homework, right? That's the first thing, do your homework. And second thing, which is very, very important, it's good to start. Hopefully use that you send the students an easy scenario of the simulation that you want to try in advance. So they try and then play against the computer, let's say, with the simulation. So they get familiar with the simulation and also they learn a bit about the concepts, but not yet too much. But at least they get familiar with the simulation. So when you get into class, they will not make you trivial questions about the game, right? They know already. But now, because they get into class, they will know that we compete and they will play everyone together, I would say, in a synchronous mode. And then it's good. What I like is first go over to the simulation, play the simulation with a more difficult scenario and let the students to make decisions based on intuition, right? Why? Because some of them will make very good decisions, some others will not, right? But after that, after they play that, then you go to the debriefing and then they will identify why they make those decisions based on intuition, whether they were good or bad decisions. And from that point, you move to the content. And then you explain why, if you guys, all of us, had the content in advance, we would be way better decision makers, right? So they will make the gap, or they will make the bridge in between the content and the experience that they just have lived, right? So after that, you send them either another homework with the game, or maybe you just download the data and send and give the students, okay, now identify your mistakes and what you have done better now that you can look your data and the data of your competitors, well, let's say your other classmates. So
absolutely.
What I'm trying to say, it's important to to let the intuition do their work, and then you as professor go with the content.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense to incorporate because the briefing, as you were saying, is something fundamental, but the way to approach it that you're proposing seems very, very interesting and sensitive as well. And in that sense, you've recommended, these best practices. Is there a person, after hearing, all of these things that we've been talking about, is there a person that you would like to listen to answering these questions like you, another guest for the Professor Game podcast?
Well, he's not alive, but I would love to hear him. It's Peter Drucker. I mean, Peter Drucker was somebody that really know about management, and his approach was very based on experience. And I guess one of the wrongdoings in teaching management is to start always from the content and only from the content, which is management is the art of making good decisions. So if you want to make good decisions, you must have a space to try, right? Exactly, to practice and to see what was good, what was wrong, and from this point move on. So I mean, if I have somebody that would like to learn, or hear about it, and typically like hear about how to teach management with simulators, is Peter Drucker. But sadly, he's not alive.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, with recommendations, and again, here, being alive or no longer with us does not make much of a difference. Is there a book that you would recommend to our audience, to the engagers?
Well, there is a book related to to professors that want to use a game-based learning approach, or a book like a more like an open mindset of book.
Whatever you want to go for. If you're thinking of people who are willing or interested in creating or using game-based learning in their classrooms, what book would you recommend them read? Again, whether it's to improve their designs, to get inspiration, or whatever route you want to go down.
Well, I will suggest two things. One, it's a course because I don't know the book, but a course of a professor from Wharton that he was teaching gamification. I took his course like 4 years ago, and he helped me to understand the basics. I mean, what things needs to be included in a game, like leaderboards, some mechanics, and to understand, because I was not a very it helps me to put things together in terms of what it's needed to develop a game, right? I mean, to develop gamification game. And
that is Kevin Werbach from the Coursera course, and he also has a book. The book is called For the Win.
Exactly. I didn't read the book because I took his class, right? But yes, this is, and actually I did have an interview with him like many years ago when we went to Wharton for the Reimagined Education Awards, when we win one of those awards. And the other book, which is I think is very important and for people who is engaging in this or maybe other, it's a book which is it's called Crossing the Chasm from Jeffrey Moore. And why? Because it's a very good book in terms like you're developing technology at the end. And at the beginning, you engage with innovators and with early adopters. But then there is a point in time that you have to cross the chasm to the early majority. And this is the most difficult thing, right? And this is when you move something which is a good innovation into a product that will solve the problem of a very pragmatic segment of customers. And this is exactly where we are now. And now we are fulfilling that need of professors all over, because we robust our products in order to serve a purpose. And the purpose of professors is to teach and to have a very well-engaged audience, right? And let this audience to learn with the tools. And the tools now it's the games.
Crossing the Chasm. That's absolutely a fantastic book. I love it. It's good for innovators, for innovation. It's many things to take into account. And what would you say, Felipe, now that you've recommended other people and their books, what would you say is, in your case, for you, what is your sort of your superpower, your sweet spot, that thing that you do great that has allowed you to be in the place where you're at your company?
As a company, as a group, we have passion for education. Our motto is let the student learn. I mean, we want the student learn. That's the most important thing. And that's why we think that fun is an important ingredient in the learning of the student. That's the first. Second, I am very lucky because I'm able to get myself together with a very talented people that helped me to develop this company. So I would say that most of the congratulations go to them, not to me. I just was the beginner. I was the initial guy, right? And the good thing it's I mean what I like to do is just to spend time with professors from all over, showing the games and showing how they can actually make a much more interesting class. And this is and I'm a good salesman, I would say. And salesman is just about like showing something and saying, "Man, I know your need, and I have something that actually will solve this need, yeah, fulfill this need." And this is something that I realize teaching in classes. Like, I mean, management and business should not be boring. I mean, if you have a company, if you have a business, it's one of the most thrilling things. So how students, management students, some of them say that this is boring. I mean, obviously the problem is with us, the professors. We have to move this from a boring class or a traditional lecture to something which is fully engaging, that they will be waiting for go to class, right? And not like saying, "Oh, I got class again." This is something that we can do, but we have to move to this a new mindset, a new set of tools, a new environment, where the students actually do the work, take the decisions, and we just help them to make better decisions. This is, I mean, what I guess it's important thing, and I like to just communicate it and maybe teach how to do it, right? How to use it. This is because we have those tools.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Felipe, this is probably one of the last questions that we will get, but sometimes it is one of the most difficult ones. And I would like to know, from whatever perspective you want to bring this, I would like to know, what is your favorite game?
Oh, my favorite game I haven't been able to find it anymore. It's a game that I played when I was in first year of undergrad. It's called DT. If you ever find it, please send it to me. DT was actually a managerial. I didn't know, but DT it was in 1995, I guess, and it was like a black screen. And DT was because of technical director, and you were the technical director of a football team, right? So basically, the game was about play the different, the different games of a Premier League or a Calcio or any of those important leagues, or a Spain league, right? And you have to manage your football players. You can buy football players, you can sell football players, and then finally it was about taking decisions like management. And that was I spent hours, I remember, in the lab at the university playing this game. And it really wasn't able to engage me. And I didn't realize that at the end it was touching something that I really was deep in my mind, but even in myself, which is management. It's like, how can I take better decisions and see the outcome, right? Well, that was the game that I really love it. More than a game of this Mario Bros. Or this sort of games that maybe everybody plays. I'm much more interested in serious games, in tactical games, right? And this DT, which is a manager of a football, a soccer team, was one of the best games I ever played.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Felipe, for joining us. I'm guessing that you are right now in Chile as well as we've been when we talked in the past.
Yes,
is that correct?
Yes, I'm Santiago, Chile, in curfew still.
Yes. So thank you very much for your time, for investing this time with us, with the engagers in this podcast, sharing your experience, your wisdom in the game-based learning world. Actually, before we leave, I want to know where the audience can find you. Do you social media? I don't know, a web page of you, of the company. Where can we find you?
It's very easy. They have to go to GameLabEducation.com, and then they will find all our simulators and the different products that we have. And nowadays, we are very close to launch in a week time. And now for the final user. So now students will be able to play one of our games directly and learn from it. So GameLabEducation.com, this is our website. So please contact us there, or maybe LinkedIn as well, or if they look for us in LinkedIn as GameLab Education, they will find us very easy.
Fantastic. Thank you very much again, Felipe, for all this time you've invested with us. However, at least for now and for today, it is time to say that it's game over. Hey, Engagers, it is fantastic to have you here, and I hope you enjoyed this interview with Felipe. And are you using Instagram? No, I'm right now getting back to posting stories. I stopped for a while. I'll be explaining it there. But now I will be once again posting stories almost every day and would love to connect with you there. And just like on Twitter, my username is Rob Alvarez B. And before you go on to your next mission, go ahead and subscribe using your favorite podcast app and listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there.